In this lecture, we're gonna learn how to launch the game as a listen server and then connect to it as a client, all using a LAN connection. Okay, so today's topic is LAN. You roughly know what this means because we talked about it, but basically, when you have a bunch of computers that are connected to the same Wi-Fi connection or to the same router, that means they're on the same local network. And on that same local network, they all have a unique local IP address. In this lecture, we're going to use that IP address to connect to a listen server on the same local area network. Now, in order to make this work, you need to have two different computers at least, because we are going to be packaging the game and sending that packaged game to a different computer and run it there. But if you don't have another computer, don't worry. This isn't mandatory. You can still follow along with the course. We're just going to use this in this one lecture because I want to show you how to test the game with multiple computers before we start using the online subsystem, which is going to allow us to connect across the internet. But that's going to take some setting up. That's going to take some work. So before we make this, I want you to teach you a way to test the game with multiple computers. So that's the reason for that. Okay, so let's begin. First, we're going to create some C++ functions, so make sure to open up Visual Studio. I usually go to the tools here and refresh my project before I start working, and then click on Open Visual Studio. I already have it open here. So in here, in the source files section, we're going to look at the game mode files here. So when we make a project, Unreal automatically creates a game mode for us. And we're going to create two different functions in this game mode file. So let's go to the header first, which is this file right here. Underneath public here, I'm going to create two functions, and these are going to be ufunction, blueprint callable, because we're going to call these from the level blueprint. The first one is going to be host LAN game. And the second one is going to be, let's just copy and paste this one, join LAN game. So very self-explanatory. I think the first one will host a game and the second one will join the game. I'm going to copy these and paste them over into the C++ file. Let's get rid of the ufunctions and get rid of the semicolons and create the function bodies. And we also need to take this part right here and just stick it in front of the function name because these functions belong to that class. And now we can start defining these functions. So let's start with the first one, which is hosting the game. To do this, we're going to call a function called server travel. And server travel is on the world. So first, we're going to call get world. This will return the world for us, and then we're going to access its server travel function. And as you can see, server travel takes in an F string called in URL. And the other options here have default values, so we don't really need to worry about them. So the first argument here is going to be the path to the map that we want to load. In this case, it's going to start with game. And the rest of it, we're going to take a look at the engine here, to the content drawer. As you can see, this is the map file that we want to load. It's in third person and maps. So if you hover over this folder here, you can see the path, or maybe you can also hover over this. Yes. So you can see that the path is game, third person, maps. So we're going to go back into Visual Studio and type in game. Let's also put a / before game, game, third person, / maps, / third person map, semicolon at the end of the line. So this will load the map, but we want to load the map and also launch the game as a listen server. And to do that, we need to give an option to this. You do that by putting a question mark and then typing listen. So the question mark indicates that we want to give an option, and that option is listen, which makes it so that the game launches as a listen server. So this is the host function. It calls server travel, which jumps the server to a new level, and the game is going to be launched as a listen server because we gave that option here. Great, now let's write the join game function. For this one, we're going to use a function called client travel But unlike server travel, client travel isn't on the world, it's actually on the player controller. To get the player controller, we need to get the game instance first. So we're gonna call get game instance, which will return the game instance for us. And the game instance has a function called get first local player controller. And this will get the first local player controller. And because we're only gonna have a single player playing, it's okay to get the first one, because that's the one we want. We can save this in a variable, let's say a player controller, PC for player controller. And of course we should check if this pointer is valid or not. Otherwise, if you try to access a pointer that's null, you're gonna get a crash instantly. And this player controller has a function called client travel. And as you can see, client travel takes in a bunch of arguments. The first one is the URL, the second one is the travel type, and the other ones have default values, so we're not gonna change them. The first one, URL, can either be a map name, like the one that we used in server travel, or it can be an IP address. In this case, because we want to connect via LAN, we're gonna use the IP address. So how can we learn the IP address? On Windows, you can simply launch a command prompt. If you go to the start menu and type in cmd, it's this one right here, so launch this. And you're gonna have to type in a command called ipconfig. So let's launch that command. ipconfig. And I'm probably gonna blur these because my actual IP will also be here, but what you're looking for is, for me, because I'm connected to the internet using an Ethernet cable, I'm looking for this Ethernet adapter Ethernet part here. If you're using a Wi-Fi connection, it's going to be Wi-Fi for you. But in both cases, you want to look for this IPv4 address here. This is my local IP address. So I'm going to copy this, paste it here as a string, and then the second argument is going to be the travel type, and we're just going to say travel underscore absolute. And that's the function we need to use to connect to a game as the client. So this call will try to connect to this IP address. If there's a server listening on the other end, it will connect to that server and load the same map and join as a client. So these are the two functions that we needed to create here. I'm going to save these, get back into the engine. I'm going to click on the live coding button here, which I usually use to compile my game. Sometimes when you make changes, they might not appear in the blueprint. For example, we created two blueprint callable functions, and if we can't see them after live coding, we might need to, close down the engine and compile the engine source, or as a last result, go into the project folder and delete some folders and rebuild the whole thing. Okay, seems like the live coding worked. So if you go to the world settings here, this tab, you can see that the game mode override here is the game mode that we just changed. So that's good because that's the game mode we want to use. We have some custom functions there now. Next up, I'm gonna launch the level blueprint. And in the level blueprint, I basically want to get input from the player. I'm gonna get input for two different keys. The first one is going to launch a server and the second one is going to join a server. And I'm also going to get the game mode and then call the functions that we just created. Okay, so firstly, let's right click, go into input. And from here, we're going to look at keyboard events, and I'm going to use the H key to host and then do the same thing, but this time for the J key, and that's going to be for joining J. Okay. So when we press the H key, I want to call that host LAN game function. And that's on the game mode. So first, let's get the game mode. So we're going to create this node called get game mode, and this will return the game mode. And we need to cast this to be the same game mode type that we had, because we know that the game mode will be the one that we just changed. So let's take this return value and cast to multiplayer course game mode, this one right here. So let's do this first. This will give us the game mode reference that we can use. And let's see now if we can access the host LAN game function. We can, great. So let's call this function. And at the end, we can also create a print string node and just say hosting. Now we're gonna do the same thing basically, so we can copy these two, paste them, and for the J key, we're just gonna call the join LAN game function. And let's also print something at the end of this. Let's say joining. And finally, I also want to get input for the escape key. And when that's pressed, I just want to quit the game so that it's easy for us to quit the game. Okay, so now we want to test the game. And to do that, we're gonna package the game up and send the game to another computer and run it here and there at the same time. And from this computer, we're gonna host the game, and from the other one, we're gonna try to join. That's the only way this works currently, because we hard-coded the IP address into the source code, as you can see here. So this value is hard-coded, so we can only join to my machine from the other one, not vice versa. Keep that in mind. Okay, so from the engine, we're gonna package this project. Go to Platforms, click on Windows, and click on Package Project. And I have a dedicated folder for these. So in here, I have a folder called Multiplayer Course, and I'm just gonna select this folder. Don't worry, if you have a previous build there, you can just select it and it will just override that one. And once you click that, the packaging will begin. If this is your first time packaging this project, it might take some time. It might take like 10 minutes or half an hour, depending on how fast your computer is. But don't worry if things take long. Chances are, if there's an error, Unreal will actually stop packaging and tell you that something went wrong. But if it's still going on, it's probably still trying to package it. So okay, for me, you can see that the packaging actually failed. So sometimes that means that you did something wrong, but sometimes actually you didn't do anything wrong. Unreal is just not working properly. So when this happens, what I do first of all immediately is to launch the folder the project is in. So it's this folder right here. I'm gonna exit out of the engine, and then in here I have a bunch of folders. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna delete binaries, intermediate, and saved. I'm just gonna delete those and then relaunch the project. It's gonna ask me if you want to rebuild. I'm gonna say yes. You should always say yes. And then Unreal is going to launch, and then we're gonna try to package the game again. Okay, so the engine is back up again. I'm just gonna try to package this again. Go to Windows, Package Project, and hopefully this time it's gonna work. As you can see, now the packaging worked. Like I said, sometimes you just gotta delete a bunch of folders, and that's Unreal Engine for you. Okay, so now that we have the game packaged up, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick up my flash drive, plug it in, and I have my flash drive folder. As you can see here, I have a bunch of other files here, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into the build folder. So this is the build that was just packaged. It's called Windows. That's the default name, you can change it. Inside of here we have an exe, and all this other stuff is also needed. So on this computer, I'm just gonna run this exe, but for the other computer, I'm gonna go back here, right click on this, click on send to zipped folder, and this will zip up the whole project folder. I'm gonna name this as LAN connection test. I'm gonna copy this and paste it into my USB drive. Okay, now that the transfer is complete, what I'm gonna do is simple. I'm gonna unplug this USB drive, plug it into my other laptop, unzip this file. Well, first transfer the file to my laptop, unzip it, and click on the exe file that I just showed you. Okay, so I have transferred the files to my other laptop, and now we're gonna test the game. So let's run the exe. And if you get this, just click allow access. As you can see, we are in the game. Now I'm gonna press the H key to host a game session as a listen server. As you can see, we got the hosting message at the top left. Now from my other computer, I'm gonna press the J key. And you can see that my other laptop has also connected to the game. Awesome. You can also play as that. So I'm gonna switch to my laptop and move the character. As you can see, the other character just moved there. My other laptop is very old, so even like the empty Unreal project runs very slowly on it. So even making the character move is kind of a pain because it's so slow. The FPS is really low, but you can see that we have two computers connected to the same LAN session and we are playing the game. Okay, so that's going to be it for this lecture. In this one, we learned how to launch a listen server and then connect to it using a LAN connection. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. And we can also press escape to quit.